Welcome back to Bricks and Clicks. I'm Ashlee Billings, your host. Today, I have a special guest with me to discuss some main reasons that people get deactivated on Amazon, reasons that they come to him. He is a former Amazonian that does most of deactivation for listings. You come because you have a deactivated account, brand registry issues, all things problems. I feel like Chris is your guy to go to. He is the founder of e-commerce Chris. Let's welcome Chris McCabe. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, great to be talking to you today.
Absolutely.
I'm doing well, but the unfortunate news is with each passing year, the list of problems that we are fixing for people grows. It doesn't diminish. I mean, maybe that doesn't shock anybody. But just to add from the partial list that you just gave, listing product and safety compliance, that has skyrocketed. Listing compliance, some listing violations, and I can give some examples in a bit. Some listing violations that people would kind of get away with because Amazon hadn't built tools to catch it. For some reason, maybe this is something I can ask you at some point. For some reason, a lot of sellers think that if you're able to get away with something today, it means you'll be able to get away with it in perpetuity. And that's not what it is with Amazon. Amazon kind of slowly turns the corner on some of these problems.
I have a lot of people that are like, well, someone else is getting away with it.
Yeah.
Why can't I get away with it? Why is the system giving you a flag and they're doing it? And I'm like, Amazon just hasn't caught them yet.
They can report them to
Yes.
get them caught. It doesn't mean that two wrongs make a right. I know that sounds
Right.
simple, but so the amount of problems we troubleshoot, back in the day, 2016, 2015, probably focused mostly around ACE and reinstatement. Back then, there was no brand registry, right? And anything they had for stuff like that was meager and inadequate. And account reinstatements. We still talk to sellers that don't quite understand that they're risking their entire account when they do certain things, like you just said. When they see somebody else doing it, they take that as a green light. And I'm here today to tell you that that's the exact opposite of what you should do.
Yes. Do not do what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
Well, that excuse won't fly. I mean, you're kind of right when you throw 5, 6 examples of ASINs at them and say, why are these people doing exactly what I'm doing and they're active and my listings are down? I mean, I empathize with that and I understand the point, but you have to take a step back and say, Amazon's very inconsistent. Amazon makes no apologies for being inconsistent. They just say, well, once things are reported, we do the right thing. They don't really embrace the idea that they should be front loading a lot of this work to prevent problems from happening to begin with. And that's gone on for years since I left the company.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say that people come to you when they're opening their account? What problems do they have when they first are beginning, do you feel like the most?
Yeah, the top ones are verification or identity verification failures. Some of the info in their documentation doesn't match what you have in Seller Central, whether it's the address, whether it's the names. Sometimes documents have a company name and then the info in Seller Central is a personal name.
Right.
And also related account blocks. Some people got blocked in the past or they're related to an account. We can debate how strongly they're related to that account, but they're, according to Amazon, related to an account that was closed before, was never properly appealed, was never reinstated. So this account is tied to it. And of course, Amazon's position is until that initial suspension is resolved, no new accounts can be created. And I see a lot of new sellers who, don't understand that because they're not sure what the account is or where the connection is. Obviously, you can't peek into Amazon's tools and see exactly what the data points are connecting you. But I mean, if you have a pretty good idea which account it is, sometimes even if you don't recognize the account, but you know what your behaviors were previously, who you granted access to, the types of things you were doing, the types of things your employees were doing, usually you can kind of start the research process on your own. You don't necessarily have to call us up right away and say, what are these guys talking about? Generally speaking, the new sellers, because they're flummoxed by this and they're not sure what to do, we tell them to call account health reps and say, just to get me started, what is this? We know it's a related account, but what's the account? So we can start researching it. The identity and verification stuff, I would just tell people don't open an account unless you know everything's going to match 100%. No typos, no bizarre abbreviations. I wish I had some hard data to talk about how many verification suspensions. All I can tell you is how many we've worked on, which is hundreds to thousands. And those are avoidable, right? And when you're a brand new seller and you don't have a lot of revenue under your feet, you don't want to start with a suspension. But that's really just making sure everything's exact before you even get started. Counting on like, well, not everything matches, but we'll explain it to Amazon. That's a losing proposition, because Amazon just, not only will they probably ignore the explanation, they might not even read the explanation because they won't care. And I think that's what some of the new accounts don't understand. It's like, you have no track record. They have no track record of making money off you, for one thing.
Yeah.
You have no positive feedback for assisting their buyers, or, being a good player in the system. So you are a blank slate. And when you're a blank slate, Amazon has no incentive to get you off on the right foot. They want you to get yourself off on the right foot.
Yes. I have a lot of clients that they're like, but I make a lot of money outside of Amazon. Why wouldn't Amazon just let me go through? Like, it's not that simple. You have to have things aligned. Everything has to be aligned across the board. The bills you send in, everything that you send into Amazon needs to be aligned. Right. And you don't know that you're deactivated until you get in and then you open to start all the fun stuff. And it's like deactivation. So
and they're shocked. I mean, at this point, there's so much material out there. I'm at the point now where I think that sellers should never be surprised when this happens, only because you should do research before you start on Amazon. And part of the research, I mean, it doesn't take long to find seller forum posts or messages about identity verification suspensions. So when people come to us and say, I've never heard of this before, it tells me probably they rushed into it and they didn't dot the I's, cross the T's. That's not a good way to start with Amazon, because imagine, even if you're able to ultimately resolve it, which then sellers are shocked how long it takes to resolve it. A lot of people think like, oh, so I just resubmit my bank statement, my articles of incorporation, I just make a copy of that, PDF it, send it in. And then when it gets rejected, they don't understand A, what to do, which is probably calling account health to find out why it's rejected. But B, they're shocked that they're getting denied in the first place. And maybe beyond that, they're shocked at the generic murky message that they get back, which is kind of like a go away message, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I don't know what you're missing. I'm not going to spend time holding your hand. If you want hand holding, you shouldn't. I mean, this is Amazon speaking. Not me, by the way. They're thinking like, I don't know why you need hand holding in the first place. This is not a learn as you go marketplace of any online business that exists anywhere. This is the least hand holding that you'll ever get. Because they have no incentive to spend time on you. If they're making money off Amazon, I suppose I should address that. If they've been recruited by business development reps, keep in mind that business development reps and my former teams, what's known as seller performance or merchant risk investigation, never talk to each other. When I was at Amazon, I had to go out of my way to talk to those guys. And usually just like the seller would forward the email, like, what the hell are you guys doing? This guy recruited me. You called me. I didn't call you. And I would see his or her email. And I would write to him, from my own Outlook inbox and say, you recruited this seller, but did you ask them if they previously sold or if they were related to a suspended account? No, I didn't ask that. So unfortunately, that's Amazon getting its wires crossed. But that's confusing. And just be ready to be confused, because the messaging isn't always going to matter. Sometimes they just right click error, they send you the wrong message. Sometimes they should be sending you a message that says something like, we need your business license. And
simple.
Well, you only need one thing. They need the business license and everything else was accepted. Problem is they don't tell you that. Right. If they did tell you that, you would send the business license, you would make sure it's right. You wouldn't overthink it. You wouldn't attach all this other stuff that might, lose the business license in a blizzard. That's what they should do. But they're using drop-down menus. They're racing through this stuff. I mean, I think at this point, even new sellers understand that wherever they are in the world, Seattle, India, wherever, they're racing through the work. So they're just looking to like bust out the messaging. That's why sellers are often confused. Like, you sent me the same message you sent me yesterday or the day before. Like, can you tell me why this one got rejected? And I mean, think about it. They had to actually create an account health team. Account health services didn't exist 3.5 years ago. They had to create a team. Their messaging is so generic and so bad and so uninformative. They had to create a team that you can call just to get interpreting or translation of the messages you get. I mean, ponder that for a moment.
Yeah.
And that's not a small team anymore. I don't know how many hundreds of people there are. So
That's crazy. And I've heard
Yeah.
the same thing with like whenever you open up a ticket inside
Mhm.
Amazon for whatever reason, a title
Yeah.
won't go through, this won't go through. They're just picking drop down to send you back an answer and not really like I've had it where I've sent you the same thing, exactly what you need. You need,
Yeah.
I know what you need. I've been through this with 14 other accounts. Please just read what I said to you. Do not send me an automated response, please.
Oh, yeah. A lot of what we do is just breaking away from that whole process because that process is dysfunctional.
Yes.
And it's identifying other pipelines to get to somebody who does actually read something. The tragedy, if you will, of this situation is that their front line or second line of defense, those are the people who are making more work for their own managers and their own executives because they don't do frontline work or second line work or third line work. And they don't seem to have any significant auditing for quality, you know? I mean, honestly, you've seen these cases, so have I. You've seen their emails. You could forward those to people in management and be like, can you just look at this and see how worthless this is? And see why I'm bothering you, XYZ person today.
Mhm.
Like, if you really want to know why I'm in your world, how I got to you, and that could be through Twitter, that could be through LinkedIn, it could be from wherever. It's because of this.
Yeah.
This message has no value. And it's just going to lead to 7 other messages back and forth. You agree, you know, don't tell me how you feel about it. I know you agree.
I agree. Yeah.
You've got a brain under your skull.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you agree. Don't spin it, you know, don't corporate speak. You know that if these teams did their job right the first time, you wouldn't have to be bothered by it. Because from time to time, there are executives who will write on Amazon's blog, or they'll go to, you know, it used to be Amazon Boost, right? The Amazon conference. Now I guess it's Accelerate. They'd show up at these conferences and complain. I mean, I don't know if you call it complaining. They would describe it as a pain point in terms of we can't handle the volume of emails we get. Well, you know how you do that? You audit the quality of the work beneath you. When you delegate things, is it handled properly? Or your direct reports. I mean, are they doing what you've hired them to do in the first place? Because if they're not, it's not necessarily your fault, but it's an opportunity for you to make a change on how you work.
Yes, Amazon. Hire Chris. He will get it all lined out for you.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Please make my life a little easier over here. I need Chris inside there.
I've been out of the fold a while. I'm okay.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yep. Seattle's nice and all, but not going to live there again. So
yes, no, I can imagine how. And I feel for some of them because I know whenever I reach some people that actually do know what they're talking about, and I'm like, can we be best friends? Can I have a little tag number so I can call you?
Right.
At least you know something and you're not just pushing me under the rug to figure it out on my own.
Yeah. And kind of getting back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast, we get so much volume of each of these kinds, each nature of a problem, that we are almost getting a little bit siloed just the way Amazon is. Like Leah McCabe does so much with listing and policy compliance, does so much with product and safety compliance, does so much with things like errant ASIN variations, does so much with brand registry snafus and problems and chaos that she's drowning in that stuff. You know, I won't speak for her, but it's like there are days I don't even talk to her until 4:00 because she's buried in it and I'm buried in my stuff and my other consultants are buried in their stuff. We keep in touch. We have daily calls and so forth. But imagine, you know, if these types of cases continue to increase, I'm either adding more headcount. I mean, first of all, I typically don't hire people unless they worked at Amazon or unless they like managed an Amazon business for a certain number of years. But there are things I have to, like updates I have to get from her on some of this stuff because she's so deep in the trenches.
Yes.
And she can tell you, you know, anyone hearing my voice who's heading to the Prosper Show, we're going to have a booth there. I mean, she can tell you that sometimes the messaging she gets from, like you said, a dedicated person gets back to the client or the brand, and she is on the call with them. She understands within moments that they don't know what to do. Yes. They don't know what they're talking about. So essentially, she's training them. The call is twice as long, 3 times as long as it could be. I mean, if they had been trained or if they knew what to do, it'd be 15 minutes, and it's 45 minutes, you know? And I'm familiar with this just from old, you know, account ASIN reinstatement stuff I used to do. And of course, calling into account health, a lot of those people are green and haven't been trained well. But the stuff she's working on, brand registry, you know, you're talking about complexity, you're talking about nuance. You can't just like, hey, snag an Amazonian and throw them in the pot. I mean, that's Like some of this involves ISO certified lab tests. Some of it involves certificates of analysis, like heavy duty compliance work.
Yes. Yeah.
So like if the person making the final call or the decision on it needs to be coached. Yeah, I mean, in the course of the call, we can do that. But what does that say about the bigger picture?
I might just have to snag her. I watch her all the time. She's everywhere, all over your things. I love all of the things that she talks about. So we might have to pull her on to do a little
and there's stuff she does
stuff
that no one else does. I mean, as I also realized over the course of 2021, 2022, that now she's so deep into it, she's doing things that no other agency or company does. I mean, I've seen when they try to do it and she inherits it when they try to do it, but she typically revs it back to square one and starts over, and kind of burns it down to the beginning. And I used to do that too, right? People would send in a plan of action, right? Mm-hmm. You don't hear the POA phrase so much anymore because Amazon asks for a POA less frequently, but you still need a plan of action if your account's suspended.
Yes.
I'm familiar with like, oh, you've submitted 7 of these, not fantastic. Maybe Amazon's not replying, and we have to retrench. We have to kind of rebuild from the beginning. Those are my words of caution. It's like, especially if it's like compliance, like unless you are hitting the nail squarely on the head, you're not going to get that listing back up, and people get desperate and they start, well, I've been selling this forever.
Or they're like, abort mission. I just need to go open a new account. Let me do that. Let me just,
or they open a new ASIN. I mean, people get desperate very quickly if it's their top seller. Yeah. Typically brands that contact us are losing 10, 20, 30K a day. When their listing's down. Yeah. Well, after a week, you're north of $200,000.
And who wouldn't panic over that? Like, I've just lost $200,000.
Yeah. So you get the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need help, so you don't lose $200,000.
Yes.
E-commerce Chris.
So best way to reach us is support@ecommercechris.com. It's an email address. Obviously, multiple people at my company, including myself, see it there. If you're going to the Prosper Show, feel free to jump by our booth. I think we're 517. But if you circle the exhibit hall enough times, you'll see us. If that's wrong,
I'll put a link in the podcast so they can find you and everything.
Yeah. And also when screwy things, I guess I'll close with when crazy things happen that cannot be explained, don't assume that Amazon is screwing you over. It might be a technical problem. It might be a glitch. Don't assume it's a glitch. Don't assume Amazon's punishing you. It could be an abusive attack from a competitor that knows how to pull strings, who knows how to misrepresent you or your listings or your behaviors, or knows how to accuse you the right way. I mean, at this point, I think we all know lots of info about how Amazon investigates accounts or listings has leaked out of the company, for lack of a better term. And it's been, traded like baseball cards on the open public, and info has been shared in terms of what do they look at, what do they not look at. Years ago, people would send me copies of SOPs from inside Amazon. So if you know what they're looking for, you probably know how to game the system. So somebody could be taking a shot at you because they see how much money they could be making by being you or by siphoning off sales from you. Doesn't mean Amazon's blameless in this equation because they should be helping you stop that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Amazon's just messing with you and that they deserve all of your ire and all of your angst, because that's not quite what it is.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, thank you for being on Bricks and Clicks. I enjoyed having you. I'll get with Leah and we'll have to pull her back on for some listing reviews.
Awesome. Let's do it again. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Bye.